My father, afraid I'd never find a wife, went so far as to get his old army buddy's beautiful granddaughter drunk. After the inevitable happened, my father used a past favor to pressure her into marrying me. It wasn't until our wedding night that I learned she was in love with someone else. For 30 years of marriage, I never once felt what it was like to be a husband. The moment I died, alone and miserable, she immediately moved to Washington, D.C. and started a life with her first love. Given a second chance at life, I wanted nothing more to do with Chloe. I went to the county clerk's office and filed for a no-fault divorce. In 2 weeks, I would be free. I got home, cleared out my closet, and had just finished making dinner when Chloe walked in. She was tall and slender with beautiful features, looking her most striking and heroic in her army uniform. Before we were married, she was the woman every man at Fort Carson wanted to marry. In my last life, that was why I had fallen for her at first sight. Trying to act normal so she wouldn't suspect anything, I stepped forward to help her with her jacket. But Chloe took a step back, her expression flat. "I'm covered in dust. I don't want to get your hands dirty." Her words were so polite you couldn't find a single fault with them, yet so cold and distant you'd never guess we'd been married for 3 years. In the past, I would have pretended not to hear her and reached for her collar anyway. Chloe would have let me, no longer pushing me away, but her almond eyes would have filled with an icy authority. It was that look that wounded me for 30 years, a wound so deep the scar on my heart never faded. This time, however, I just nodded, dropped my hand, and turned to the kitchen to bring out the food. "I made your favorite scrambled eggs. Come see if you like them." Chloe took off her jacket, unfazed. "I've told you I eat at the mess hall every night. You don't have to cook for me." It was the same in my last life. She never ate a single bite of my cooking. I paused for a moment, my voice quiet but firm. "I'd really like you to try it. Just one bite, please? After all, this is the first and last time. I need to do this for myself to close this chapter." As the words left my mouth, I saw the hand at her side clench into a fist. But all she said was, "Fine, I'll follow the order." Her words were a knife to the heart. Chloe was a colonel in the 1st Brigade at Fort Carson, and while I was a civilian administrator, my GS grade outranked her. That's why, in my last life, whenever I asked anything of her, she would say, "I'll follow the order." It was her way of making it crystal clear that she was acting out of duty, not love. Chloe walked past me without a word and sat down at the table. A faint, familiar scent reached me. I froze, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "You went to see Ryan today, didn't you?" No one knew better than me that this was the scent of the soap her childhood friend, Ryan, always used. Chloe's placid expression vanished, her voice dropping to an arctic chill. "Are you having me followed?" Seeing the sharp look in her eyes, a wave of sadness washed over me, and the words I wanted to say died in my throat. After a moment, I just said quietly, "It's been a long day. You should get some sleep." I turned and headed for the bedroom, but to my surprise, Chloe followed me. I couldn't help but ask, "What is it?" A mocking glint appeared in her eyes. "It's the 15th of the month. Weren't you the one who suggested we turn in early?" It hit me then. In my last life, because Chloe refused to sleep with me, I had resorted to ordering her, setting the 15th of every month as our designated night. Chloe pushed me onto the bed, her words sharp as glass. "Does General Clark know his son has to resort to this just to sleep with his own wife?" My hands, hidden behind my back, clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms until they were numb. The next moment, I pushed her soft body away. "Not tonight, and never again." Pushed back, Chloe stood by the bed and frowned. "You'd better not be playing games." With that, she turned and walked out, entering the other room and locking the door behind her. Ever since we married, Chloe had kept a cot in the study, sleeping separately from me. In my last life, I snuck into her room one night. After that, she started locking the door. Hearing the click of the lock, I gave a bitter, self-deprecating smile. "Don't worry, Chloe. I won't be so foolish again." I turned off the light, rolled over, and fell into a heavy sleep. The next day, I was busy on base all morning. Around noon, an orderly came to tell me that my father, General Clark, wanted to see me in his office. When I pushed the door open, I saw Chloe was already there. General Clark didn't look up. "Sit down. How are you two getting along?" I glanced at Chloe and gave my usual upbeat report. "We're doing great, Dad." But then the general looked up, his eyes fixed on Chloe. "But I've been hearing rumors that you've been spending a lot of time with a certain doctor at the clinic. Is that true?" Chloe's expression tightened, and I saw her hand clench at her side. The atmosphere in the office grew tense. Chloe lowered her gaze, about to speak, when I cut in with a smile. "That was my idea. Chloe froze, looking at me in astonishment. I kept my expression casual. Dr. Ryan lost both his parents and he's all alone out here. Can't be easy. I just asked Chloe to drop off a few things for him on my behalf. It was my fault for not being more careful. I never thought it would start rumors. The general was silent for a moment. I couldn't tell if he believed me, but he just grunted, put down his pen, and stood up. Let's all get some lunch. On the way to the mess hall, Chloe gave me a long, searching look, but I avoided her gaze. I just wanted to avoid any more complications before the divorce was final and before I had a chance to talk to my father. Whatever happened between Chloe and me, it shouldn't be allowed to affect my father's reputation. After lunch, the three of us went our separate ways. That evening, I didn't go looking for Chloe. I just went home after work and started packing. As I stood in the living room, my eyes landed on a pair of ceramic figurines, a man and a woman, on the media console, and I felt a pang of memory. I remembered buying them right after Chloe and I got married. I remembered showing them to her like a prized possession, only to be met with a look of pure disdain. That's something a child would like. Why would you buy that? But when Ryan came back to town, Chloe went out and bought an identical pair for him. Swallowing the bitter feeling, I tossed the figurines into a duffel bag and gathered a few other non-essential items. After clearing everything out, I lifted the surprisingly light bag and realized that in 3 years of marriage, Chloe and I had accumulated pathetically few things together. I walked out to the curb and tossed the entire bag into the trash bin. Just as I turned to go back inside, I heard a car engine cut off nearby. Then, a familiar voice drifted to my ears. Chloe, after being forced to marry Ethan for 3 years, are you sure you haven't developed any feelings for him at all? I froze. I could see Chloe and Ryan standing together just down the street. The next moment, Chloe's clear, cold voice cut through the air. I can swear on my life that I will never love him. If I do, may I die a horrible death. The color drained from my face, but I just stood there, perfectly still, because in my last life, I had seen it with my own eyes. How Chloe catered to Ryan's every whim, doting on him endlessly. When Ryan was sad, Chloe would comfort him in a soft voice. When he was angry, she would soothe him with a smile. When he had a fever, she would stay up all night by his side. So, in this new life, I knew better than anyone that if it weren't for me, Chloe and Ryan would have been the perfect couple, a true love story destined to last a lifetime. This time, I wouldn't be the villain standing in their way. I turned, went back inside, and poured myself a glass of whiskey. I didn't expect Chloe to come in right after. She paid no mind to the glass in my hand, only asking coolly, "Since when did you take up eavesdropping?" I flinched but ignored her jab. Taking a sip of my drink, I managed a weak smile. "You didn't have to make such a dramatic vow." Chloe's face was a mask of indifference. "A vow is only punished if it's broken. It's the only way to prove I will never fall in love with you." Even though I had already decided to let go, her words still felt like a knife twisting in my chest, and I could taste blood in the back of my throat. I tightened my grip on the glass, downed the rest in one go, and said, "Good to know. That way, when the divorce is finalized and I'm gone, she won't feel a thing." Seeing my reaction, Chloe frowned, a flicker of confusion on her face. But she didn't dwell on it. She turned to go to her room, then stopped short when she saw the royal blue shirt in the trash can. "Isn't that your favorite shirt?" I was surprised she remembered. I looked at it, my expression neutral, and lied smoothly. "I don't like it anymore, so I tossed it." Chloe didn't press the issue and walked into her room. I turned and went back to mine. Sometime later, a light rain began to fall outside. The sound of the rain soon lulled me to sleep. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder jolted me awake. I shot up in bed, clutching my chest, gasping for breath. My mother died in a car crash during a thunderstorm just like this when I was 10. Ever since then, I've been terrified of thunder. It wakes me from the deepest sleep. After we got married, I used to go to Chloe's room whenever it stormed, but she never once opened the door for me. The thunder rolled on and on. It was half an hour before it finally subsided, and my shaking slowly stopped. I turned on the light, needing a glass of water. As I passed through the living room, I saw the front door was wide open. I stepped outside and saw that the door to Ryan's house next door was also ajar. I moved closer and, through the crack in the door, I saw Chloe holding Ryan gently, her face a perfect picture of tenderness and concern. It was an expression she had never once shown me. I watched for only a second before turning around and going back to my room. To my own surprise, I felt strangely calm. Perhaps I had just gotten used to it. But once I lay back down, sleep was impossible. I stared at the ceiling for a while, then got up again, put on a jacket, and went outside. Under the old oak tree in the backyard, I squatted and dug in the dirt for a long time until I finally unearthed a muddy glass jar. The jar was filled with little paper stars, something I had insisted we make and bury together right after we were married. Inside each one, I had written down my hopes for our future, my dreams for our little family. Back then, I was so sure I could make her fall in love with me. But the reality of my last life was a harsh slap in the face. I opened the jar, poured out all the paper stars, and unfolded them one by one. Then, with a lighter, I set them on fire one by one. I found the one. Her name is Chloe, and one day I'm going to marry her. Chloe agreed to marry me. I'm finally going to be with her for real. I was too excited to sleep all night. Chloe seems a little distant, but that's okay. I know I can make her fall in love with me. I watched the flames turn them to ash, my youthful hopes transforming into the calm acceptance of today. Suddenly, Chloe's voice came from behind me. "What are you doing out here burning things in the middle of the night?" My hand trembled slightly, but I didn't stop. I tossed the last slip of paper into the flames. As the wind scattered the last of the ashes, I slowly stood up, just getting rid of some useless things. Chloe glanced at the empty jar, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but I knew instantly she had no memory of what it once held. Chloe didn't dwell on it, her gaze shifting away. Ryan had a nightmare. The thunder scared him, so I went to check on him. Don't read too much into it, and don't give him a hard time. I gave a slight, bitter smile. Even now, her first instinct was to protect Ryan. I almost had to admire her devotion. I won't. I tossed the empty jar aside and headed back to the house. A moment later, Chloe followed. We went to our separate rooms, to our separate beds and separate dreams. A few quiet days passed. Only 10 days left until I was gone. The day I arrived on base, a soldier walked up and clapped me on the shoulder. "Ethan, good to see you." Perfect timing. Corporal Williams from the Inspector General's office is getting married and handing out cigars. Let's go congratulate him. That's when I remembered from my past life. Williams was marrying one of the company commanders. We went to his office, had a piece of cake, and Williams invited everyone to the reception that afternoon. The reception was held at a local restaurant, packed with well-wishers. I spotted Chloe right away, surrounded by a crowd. As the groom's commanding officer, she was there to offer her congratulations. I didn't stare, turning instead to chat with some other colleagues. A while later, a loud voice cut through the noise. "Colonel, don't you have the duty roster tonight? Are you sure you should be drinking?" Chloe's voice was cool. "I can." I took leave. Then the same guy slurred, "Hey Colonel, Dr. Ryan here volunteered to run interference for the groom, and he's only had one drink. The way you're protecting him, you'd think he was your husband." I paused and looked over. Chloe was propping up a stumbling Ryan. The man who'd spoken had already passed out on the table. The noisy restaurant fell silent for a beat as every eye in the room turned to me. The guy next to me gave my arm a little tug. "Ethan, don't pay him any mind. He's drunk." Chloe frowned, helped the unsteady Ryan into a chair, and looked like she was about to walk over and explain. Before she could take a step, I smiled and said, "I know he's just joking. I don't mind." Chloe lowered the foot she had started to raise. She looked at me, at my smile that didn't reach my eyes, and a strange feeling seemed to settle over her. She opened her mouth to say something else, but a gasp came from behind her. "Dr. Ryan, what's wrong?" Chloe whipped around to see Ryan curled on the floor, clutching his chest, his face turning blue as he struggled to breathe. She immediately rushed to his side, pulling him into her arms and, without a moment's hesitation, began applying gentle pressure to his chest. "He's having an asthma attack. Call 911. Once Ryan's breathing evened out, Chloe lifted him onto her back without a second thought and rushed outside, leaving all of us, including me, in her wake. I watched the scene unfold in silence. The reception broke up soon after. I went back to my office, wrote up a transfer request, and knocked on the general's door. "General Clark, I'm requesting a permanent transfer to Washington, D.C. My words hung in the air of his office. General Clark slowly looked up, his weathered face stern. "A transfer to D.C.? On what grounds? Are you just going to walk away from your wife, your family?" My throat felt tight. My father and I had never been close, especially after my mother died when I was 10. He was always busy, and we rarely spoke. In my last life, I always thought my father didn't really love me. It was only after I died that I understood he had called in that old favor, all to get Chloe to marry me. Right or wrong, he had done it just so I could have what I wanted, so I could be happy. I took a deep breath. I've already filed for divorce. It'll be final in 10 days. Divorce? The general shot to his feet. Why? Did Chloe do something to you? I gave a wry smile. Dad, I know how this marriage happened. Her heart isn't in it. I tried. I really did. But I've decided it's time to stop holding each other back. The general's face was grim, but he said nothing. I pressed on. I know you're being transferred to DC soon. Why can't we go together, father and son? The general's expression shifted. How did you know about that? Because it happened in my last life. In my last life, after he was transferred, things between Chloe and me got even worse. I didn't say anything, just waited. After a long moment, the general waved his hand and signed the papers. Fine, just don't come to regret this. I smiled. I won't. That afternoon, neither Chloe nor Ryan returned to the base. That night, Chloe didn't come home either. I didn't think much of it. Ryan had an asthma attack, and with no one else to look after him, of course Chloe wouldn't leave his side. I got ready for bed and went to sleep as usual. The next day, I walked home alone after work. As I was passing the movie theater, I saw a familiar car parked by the curb. I stopped, just in time to see Chloe opening the passenger door for Ryan. Ryan saw me first. He was already in the passenger seat, but immediately started to get out. Ethan, you're heading home? We can give you a ride. And don't get the wrong idea. I was supposed to meet a friend for a movie, but they bailed at the last minute. I just happened to run into Chloe, so she came with me instead. In my last life, I was obsessed with little details like that. I saw the passenger seat of her car as a symbol of my place as her husband, a source of security in our marriage. But now, having given up on Chloe herself, why would I care who sat in her passenger seat? Seeing him about to get out, I stopped him. It's fine, I don't mind. Don't get out, it's a hassle. I'm happy to walk. Chloe glanced at me, looking like she wanted to say something, but I had already turned and walked away. That night, after my shower, I saw Chloe was still working in the study. I hesitated for a moment before knocking on her door. It's almost 10. Aren't you going to bed? As an officer, Chloe was disciplined about her schedule and was never up past 10. Tonight was an exception. Chloe didn't even look up. There's a talent show on base tomorrow. Ryan's performing, and I need to finish this paperwork tonight or I'll miss it. She said it so casually, completely oblivious to the man standing there, concerned about her. My chest tightened. It was true, you only make time for what you care about. I knew this from my last life, so why was I putting myself through it again? I just nodded, said nothing more, and went back to my room. I crossed another day off the calendar. 8 days until the divorce was final, until I could leave for DC with my father. The talent show was the next morning. I didn't go. I didn't expect to see Chloe at all that day, but just after lunch, as I was returning to my office, she approached me, her tone sharp. Did my father tell you yesterday that the suspect in the 218 mining case has been tracked to Durango? And was it you who told him not to send me to assist with the investigation? I was taken aback. Chloe's father had been murdered years ago in that very case, the 218 mining incident, and it had remained unsolved ever since. She was obsessed with it, but I knew nothing about the suspect being in Durango or about any orders from my father. I was about to speak, but her eyes, usually so composed, were blazing. How could you be so selfish as to keep me trapped here? No one knows this killer better than I do. I have to go to Durango. An image flashed in my mind from 3 years ago, Chloe's mother on her deathbed, pleading with me. Ethan, that girl's obsession runs too deep. I'm so afraid she'll do something reckless to avenge her father, that she'll put herself in danger. Please, watch over her. I promise, ma'am, I won't let anything happen to her. The memory faded, and I hardened my voice. This has nothing to do with me. Who gets sent to Durango is a command decision. You're a soldier. You follow orders. Chloe's hands clenched into fists. Ethan, she said, her voice cold, this will only make me despise you more. My breath hitched, but I didn't say another word. I was distracted all afternoon. Suddenly, there was a knock on my office door. I looked up to see Ryan. He was wearing a simple white shirt, looking clean-cut, tall and handsome. No wonder Chloe could never forget him, I thought. I gathered myself. Dr. Ryan, can I help you with something? Ryan glanced up at me quickly, then suddenly dropped to his knees, bowing his head to the floor. Ethan, I'm begging you. Chloe needs to be the one to catch the man who killed her father. Don't you care about what she wants at all? Please, let her go to Durango. I shot to my feet, my expression hardening. The suspect's location in the 218 mining case is classified information. How do you know about it? Did you bug a command briefing? Ryan's plea died on his lips, the color draining from his face. Under my intense stare, he stammered, unable to form a word. Just then, Chloe walked in. Her face was a cold mask as she helped Ryan to his feet. She looked at me with a loathing I had never seen before. "Ethan, how could you make him kneel to you? You're abusing your authority." Ryan's eyes welled with tears. "Chloe, it's my fault. Don't fight with him because of me." Chloe turned to him, her voice softening. "Don't worry. I'm here." Watching them, I felt another sharp pain in my chest. I clenched my fists to steady myself and asked in a level voice, "Do you have any idea what he's done?" "He compromised classified information. According to regulations." Before I could finish, Chloe cut me off, her voice low and steady. "Whatever the crime, I'll take the punishment for him." I stood there, stunned and, for the first time, truly angry. Seeing the unwavering devotion in her eyes, a bitter ache spread through my chest. "Chloe, are you willing to throw away your entire career for him?" Chloe hesitated, then said, "He only took that risk for me. Ultimately, this is my fault. I already failed him once when I married you. I can't let him get hurt again because of me." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm, but I couldn't stop the sharp, twisting pain in my gut. I closed my eyes, the disappointment thick in my voice. "I'll pretend this never happened. As for the Durango assignment, I'll talk to the general. Now both of you, get out." Chloe shot me a surprised look, but her concern for Ryan won out, and she helped him out of the office. As I watched them leave, I wiped a tear from my eye and whispered to myself, "Soon, you won't have to fail him anymore." I took a deep breath and picked up the phone to call my father. That evening, I sat at the table, waiting for Chloe to get home. The moment she walked in, I spoke. "The orders came down. You leave for Durango in 7 days to assist with the investigation." Chloe paused, as if she hadn't expected me to actually help her. She nodded. "Thank you." I nodded in silence, then got up and went to my room. That afternoon, I had gone to the station and bought a one-way ticket to DC. In 7 days, as she left for Durango, I would be leaving for Washington, each of us going our own way. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing, placing my clothes, certificates, and medals inside. Aside from the clothes I'd need for the next couple of days, almost every trace of me was gone from that house. Just as I snapped the latches shut and lifted the suitcase, a hand grabbed my wrist. "Where are you going?" I froze. Was that panic and anxiety on Chloe's face? No, the only person who could make her anxious was Ryan. I became even more composed. "I just thought the house was getting cluttered. I'm just packing away some old clothes." I gestured to a bag nearby. "I packed up some of your old things, too." It was all clothing I had bought for her over the years, things she had never even looked at twice. Since she didn't like them, I might as well get rid of them. Chloe hesitated, wondering what was wrong with her. Why was she suddenly afraid I was leaving? She composed herself, released my wrist, and her expression turned icy once more. "I wanted to let you know, Ryan has requested to go as the accompanying medic. He'll be with me. He was close with my father, and he wants to be there when I catch the killer. Don't make a big deal out of it." My hands stopped moving. After a long pause, I asked, "Aren't you worried something might happen to him if you take him along?" Chloe answered without a trace of hesitation, "I'll protect him. I won't let anything happen to him." Hearing that, I couldn't help a silent, bitter laugh. Of course, how could she ever let anything happen to Ryan? He was the most important person in the world to her. I lowered my gaze and turned away. "I'm going to bed." But I didn't hear her footsteps leaving. I started to turn, curious, but before I could, Chloe suddenly threw herself into my arms. Her soft body pressed against mine, and my heart skipped a beat. "What are you doing?" Her breath was warm, her body was warm, but her words plunged me into an icy abyss. "I know you're angry. As long as you don't cause trouble for Ryan, I can help you with that." I recoiled as if burned, shoving her away. "What do you take me for?" Her face was blank, her eyes devoid of any affection. I felt nothing but humiliation. I pushed her out of the room and slammed the door. Leaning against the door, my heart felt like it was being slowly carved to pieces. For the next few days, I kept busy with my preparations to leave. 5 days passed quickly, and soon it was my second to last day. The official transfer orders for my father and me had come through. After clearing out my office, I hesitated for a long time before finally taking a ballistic vest over to Chloe's office. "This killer is ruthless and armed. You have to be careful." I had given her many gifts in my last life. This would be the last. She took it without much thought. "Thanks," she said flatly. She didn't even give it a second glance. I pressed my lips together, then noticed another ballistic vest already lying on her desk. I froze. "Oh, you already have one." Just as I said it, a flicker of warmth crossed her face. Ryan got it for me. My expression fell. I see. Mine was unnecessary. Then, after a moment of silence, I remembered. Let's have dinner tomorrow. Our last one. Chloe frowned, about to refuse, but something in my eyes made her stop. She remembered that I was the reason she was going to Durango at all, and her lips tightened. All right. The next day was my last. I spent the day making dumplings. It's a tradition for a safe journey. Chloe and I both needed to move on safely to our own separate futures. When Chloe got home, she seemed surprised. For the first time, she said, "This is thoughtful of you." I smiled and brought over 2 dipping sauces. "Come on, sit down. They're fresh out of the pot. I remember you like them hot." At that, Chloe looked genuinely surprised. In 3 years of marriage, we had rarely eaten a meal just the 2 of us. Most of the time, it was with my father. Other than eating at the mess hall, the only other time was for holidays. She seemed shocked that I remembered how she liked them. She sat down, picked one up, and ate it. A little awkwardly, she said, "They're very good." I didn't say anything. I never imagined our first real meal alone together would be our last. I was about to say something when the landline next to the sofa rang. Chloe got up to answer it. After she hung up, she glanced at me, then picked up her already packed bag by the door. "Something's come up on base. I have to go take care of it. I won't be back tonight. I'll just leave from there in the morning. Don't wait up for me. Get some sleep." And with that, she opened the door and was gone. I looked at the half-eaten dumpling left in her bowl, gave a small, tight smile, and went on eating as if nothing had happened. Wait for her? I had stopped waiting for her a long time ago. I finished all the dumplings by myself, then washed the dishes and put everything away. And then, I spent one last night in that house. The next morning at 6 o'clock, I opened my eyes to a bright, beautiful day, and a genuine smile spread across my face. I made myself a proper breakfast and savored it, then packed my last 2 shirts into my suitcase. I took the divorce decree from the bottom drawer and placed it prominently on the desk. After the 15-day waiting period, the marriage is automatically dissolved. The clerk's words echoed in my head. I picked up my suitcase, opened the door, and was about to leave when I saw 2 familiar figures at the entrance to the base housing area, getting into a green army jeep. It was Chloe and Ryan. So it wasn't base business last night. It was Ryan business. She was doing everything she could to be with him. I watched their jeep drive away, then smiled, a weight lifting from my shoulders. I turned, closed the door, and walked away from the house I had shared with Chloe, a house that now held no trace of me. Just as I reached the gate of the housing area, another jeep pulled up. General Clark rolled down the window. "All set? Get in." I nodded and got in the car. The jeep headed for the train station. At 8:20 a.m., 2 trains pulled out of the station at the same time. One from Colorado Springs to Washington, D.C. One heading north, one south, parting ways never to cross paths again. Through my window, I saw Chloe and Ryan on the opposite platform. My lips formed the silent word, "Goodbye." On the other train, Chloe suddenly felt a strange pang and looked across the tracks, but all she saw was the back of a train pulling away. A sudden sense of unease washed over her, though she couldn't say why. And for some reason, I suddenly popped into her head. Why was she thinking of him? Chloe shook her head, pressing her temples. Ryan, sitting beside her, noticed. "Chloe, what's wrong?" Chloe pulled her gaze away. "Nothing. I was just thinking about the case." That was right. Nothing was more important right now than catching the man who killed her father. Her expression hardened with resolve. Chloe's mission in Durango went smoothly. She had studied the 218 mining case for years. Just as she'd said, no one knew the killer better than she did. With her help, the local authorities made rapid progress, and the suspect was apprehended without incident. After all these years, this moment had finally come. As she watched the killer being led away in handcuffs, Chloe fought back tears, but her eyes were red-rimmed. Ryan was by her side, congratulating her on finally getting justice, but for some reason, the face that flashed in her mind at that moment was mine. Chloe quickly shook her head, pushing the strange thought away. It must be because I helped make this happen. That's why she was thinking of me. With the operation over, Chloe and Ryan didn't linger, taking the next train back to Colorado Springs. It was evening when they arrived. Chloe didn't even go home first. She planned to go straight to the cemetery. Ryan looked at her with concern. "Chloe, I'll go with you." But Chloe didn't want to drag him around any further. His health was fragile and she didn't want to risk it. "No, Ryan, you take the jeep and go home. Don't worry about me." She waved over a driver and handed him Ryan's bag. Ryan knew she probably had a lot she wanted to say to her parents alone. He wanted to be with her, but since she insisted, he let it go and left in the Jeep. Chloe borrowed an old bicycle and rode it to the cemetery. Her parents were buried together. Chloe carried 2 bouquets of flowers up the hill. She hadn't expected anyone else to be there, but in the distance, she saw a figure standing before her parents' headstone, their back to her. Chloe walked closer. "Mr. Davis." The man didn't turn, but simply replied, "You're here." Mr. Davis had been a close friend of her parents, one of the few survivors of the 218 mining incident. He had looked out for her after her father died, right up until she got married and made colonel. Only then did he step back to focus on his own family. She had planned to call him with the news later, but it seemed he was already well informed, having arrived at the cemetery before she did. Chloe placed the flowers on each grave, wiped the headstone clean, and stood up. Then she heard Mr. Davis speak. "I never thought I'd live to see that man brought to justice. I should have known you'd be the one to do it." The wheels of justice turn slow, but they grind fine. He was always going to pay for what he did. Mr. Davis sighed. "I have to admit, I was surprised that boy Ethan let you go to Durango. After all, when your mother was dying, she made him promise to look after you. I was stunned for a long time when I heard you were going. Now I see he just had faith in your abilities. I was worrying for nothing." It was like a thunderclap exploded next to her ear. Took Chloe a moment to find her voice. "Mr. Davis, you mean, before my mother passed away?" Mr. Davis suddenly realized. "Ethan never told you? On her deathbed, your mother was afraid you'd do something reckless, so she made him promise to keep you safe. No wonder he didn't want her to go. It was because of that promise. But why hadn't he told her?" Thinking back on the things she had said to me, Chloe pressed her lips together. She had misunderstood. Even if she didn't love me, she owed me an apology. She quickly said her goodbyes to Mr. Davis and headed for home. On the way, she passed a stand selling candied apples. Remembering I liked them, she bought one. When she got home, she pushed the door open, a little nervously. But the house was empty. A single glance told her I wasn't there. "Ethan?" She called out twice, but no one answered. Just as she was wondering where I could be, her eyes fell on the divorce decree on the desk. The candied apple slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. Chloe stared at it blankly for a long moment before it registered. I had filed for divorce. But why? I had been so desperate to marry her, had even let my father pressure her into it. What was this now? Was he playing some kind of game? Chloe couldn't quite name the feeling in her chest, but on impulse, she pushed open the door to my room. A part of her still didn't believe it, but when she looked inside, everything that belonged to me was gone. For a second, Chloe felt a wave of relief, but it was followed by a strange, hidden pang of sadness. It was probably just regret that she never got to apologize, she told herself. With that thought, she picked up the candied apple, threw it in the trash, and went to her room. But as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep, an unfamiliar restlessness creeping over her. The next day, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Ryan standing there. She felt a strange, unexpected twinge of disappointment. Ryan held out a plate of pastries. "Chloe, I just baked these. Have one." Chloe took one and tried it. "What do you think?" Ryan asked, his eyes bright with anticipation. "It's delicious." Ryan smiled at her praise and set the plate on the table, but then he saw the divorce decree. He froze, then looked back at her in shock. "Chloe, what is this?" "Ethan divorced me." She said it calmly, as if commenting on the weather. Hearing this, Ryan immediately put down the plate and grabbed her hands. "I've waited so long for this day. You only married Ethan because you felt you owed the general. Now that he's filed for divorce, we can finally be together." His voice was trembling slightly. Chloe patted his back gently. "Yes," but a strange feeling flickered inside her. The morning's interruption didn't last long. They both had to get to work. When Chloe arrived on base, she went straight to General Clark's office. She didn't know if the general knew about the divorce or how he would react, but she felt she owed him an explanation. But when she pushed open the door, she found the office was completely empty. He was gone too. A look of shock crossed Chloe's face, and that strange feeling intensified. Why had they both left without a word? "Colonel, are you looking for the general?" a colleague's voice asked from behind her. Before she could even turn to answer, he continued, "General Clark and his son were both transferred to DC. It's strange. Why didn't you go with them?" Chloe didn't answer. She just went back to her own office and stared into space for a long time. She couldn't understand why she felt so lost. This should have been a good thing. She was free from a man she didn't love, free from her obligation to the general. So why did it feel like something was missing? For the next few days, Chloe forced herself not to think about me. Meanwhile, Ryan asked her to officially get back together. Chloe thought about how she had failed him once before. She couldn't do it to him again. She agreed. But whenever they discussed their future, she found her thoughts drifting back to me. And the closer they got to setting a date, the more often I came to mind. Sometimes she even wondered how I would react if I heard the news. Then she would catch herself and think she must be going crazy. We were divorced. What did any of it have to do with me anymore? After another party on base, Chloe and Ryan had both had a little to drink. In a moment of impulse, Ryan leaned in and kissed her. It was like a spark to dry tinder. Chloe immediately took control, kissing him back passionately. They kissed for a long time, both getting carried away. And in that moment, Chloe subconsciously whispered, "Ethan." The air froze. Disbelief was written on both their faces. Ryan started to say something, but Chloe cut him off, quickly said goodnight, and shut herself in her room. She sat in the dark, staring at the moonlight, unable to believe she had said my name. But that strange feeling was growing stronger, and all the events of the past few weeks came rushing back. She started to search for a reason. She sat there until dawn, and when the sun rose, she had reached a shocking conclusion. She was in love with me. She didn't want to admit it, but it was the only thing that explained her recent behavior, her feeling of being lost. She buried her face in her hands. She had to see me. She had to be sure. Chloe didn't sleep a wink. At first light, she went to the base, requested emergency leave, and bought the first train ticket to Washington, D.C. 12 hours later. She was in D.C. She went straight to my father's house and knocked on the door. When the door opened, it wasn't me, but my father, who did not look pleased to see her. "Chloe, what are you doing here?" Chloe pressed her lips together. "General, why did you and Ethan leave without saying anything? Where's Ethan? I need to see him." The general's expression was grim. "Ethan isn't in D.C. He was reassigned. It's classified. You should leave. You and Ethan are divorced. Don't come here again." Chloe blocked the door as he tried to close it. "Please, just tell me where he is. Otherwise, I'll wait right here." My father gave her an odd look. "Suit yourself." Then he shut the door. The general paid her no mind, letting her stand on the porch while he went about his day, drinking his coffee and reading the paper. That night, as he was getting ready for bed, he saw she was still standing there. She had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. He gave a cold snort and drew the curtains. After hours of standing, Chloe's legs were numb, but she couldn't leave. This was her only chance to find me. She had to see me to ask for my forgiveness. Late that night, a sudden clap of thunder split the sky, and a torrential rain began to fall. Chloe was soaked to the bone in seconds. Still, she didn't move, letting the rain beat down on her. But slowly, her vision began to blur, the world started to spin, and she collapsed. While she was unconscious, Chloe had a dream. "You don't have to cook for me. Don't touch my things." She saw herself looking at a man with cold, dismissive eyes. The man was hunched over, clearing away a dinner that hadn't been touched. Chloe was confused. Where was this? Why did the woman in the dream look just like her, only so much older, so worn down? And the look in her eyes was deeply unsettling. She tried to get a closer look at the man, and then he turned his head. Chloe froze. It was me. But this version of me was stooped, his eyes completely empty. How had I become like this? There was no answer. The scenes kept shifting, but two things remained the same: her cold, indifferent gaze, and my look of utter defeat. It was as if she lived out an entire lifetime in that dream, waking up at the exact moment the broken version of me finally passed away. How could she have treated me that way? Had I divorced her so decisively because I had seen the same future? "You're awake." My father's voice sounded beside her. Chloe was disoriented for a second before realizing she was in a hospital. "Why would you put yourself through this? You didn't appreciate Ethan when he was here. He left completely heartbroken, and now you show up on my doorstep half dead. I wanted Ethan to marry you because I thought you were a good person, a woman of character. I never imagined it would end like this." Chloe pushed herself up. "I'm sorry, General. I let you down. Please, tell me where Ethan is. Give me a chance to make things right." My father sighed, but seeing the genuine remorse in her eyes, he finally told her where I was. It turned out I had only been in D.C. for 2 days before I received direct orders from the Pentagon. I had been reassigned to the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico to work on a new weapons development program. As a lead research scientist, I had no grounds to refuse. Besides, It was an honor to be chosen for such an important project. I left for New Mexico immediately. Once Chloe knew where I was, she didn't stay any longer. She returned to Colorado. She had arrangements to make. First, she had to talk to Ryan. When she told him, he stared at her in disbelief. "Chloe, you can't be serious. You're not going to marry me because you're going after Ethan? You love him? How could you possibly be in love with him?" Chloe tried to calm him. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but I can't control how I feel. I know my own heart now, and I can't marry you. It wouldn't be fair to you." "But how is that possible?" Ryan still couldn't believe it. "She treated me like a stranger. How could she love me? I know this is hard to accept. Whatever I can do to make it up to you, I will." Ryan left in tears, telling her she would regret this. Chloe still gave him some money and called a few friends on the base, asking them to look out for him. After dealing with Ryan, the second thing Chloe did was go to the cemetery to say goodbye to her parents. She didn't know when she'd be back. The third was to explain everything to Mr. Davis, giving him some money to thank him for all his years of support. Then, with grim determination, she submitted a request for a transfer, a volunteer post as a perimeter guard at my new base. Sitting on the train to New Mexico, Chloe suddenly remembered that day they both left Colorado Springs. Had I been on that other train, the one heading south? Her heart fluttered as she clutched the paper with the base's address. "Ethan, I'm coming for you." 8 hours later, she arrived at White Sands Missile Range. Chloe found the base using the address she was given. In the distance, she saw a familiar silhouette. 3 days earlier, when I landed in New Mexico, a gust of wind kicked up, and I was momentarily blinded by a cloud of sand. When the dust settled, the true landscape was revealed. It was vast and sparsely populated, nothing but wind and sand as far as the eye could see. As I exited the small regional airport, I saw the female soldier sent to pick me up. I walked over with my suitcase, and she gave me a crisp salute. "Mr. Clark." I returned a nod. "That's me." "Welcome, sir. I'm Specialist Scarlett. You can just call me Scarlett." She introduced herself and outlined the plan. "I've been assigned to pick you up. We'll get you settled in your quarters first. Then I'll give you a tour of the research facility and take you to meet General Miller." I nodded. As we spoke, we walked over to a military Humvee. Scarlett put my suitcase in the back and opened the rear door for me. I thanked her and got inside. As the vehicle pulled away, I looked out at the passing desert landscape, my mind on what lay ahead. The Advanced Propulsion Research Center was one of the nation's most classified facilities, dedicated to developing next-generation weaponry. As a senior research scientist, I should have been here from the start. But my father hadn't wanted me to take on such a demanding post, and then I had married Chloe, so I stayed in Colorado. Before arriving, I had undergone extensive background checks and signed a stack of security agreements. While the thought of serving my country and realizing my potential was thrilling, a quiet sense of unease lingered beneath my excitement. Scarlett must have noticed my subdued mood, because she started a conversation. "I know it's not much to look at out here, but the people on base are great." I paused, realizing she probably thought I was disappointed with the assignment. I gave a small laugh. "I think this place is fine. I heard you were at Fort Carson before. The scenery is a lot nicer, and the work is less intense. Why would you want to come to a remote place like this?" Scarlett seemed genuinely confused, letting out a small sigh. As we drove through another rocky canyon, I said almost to myself, "But this is where the important work is being done for our country. Isn't this where we're supposed to be?" Scarlett seemed taken aback, and not knowing what to say, she just looked down and fell silent. I pressed my lips together, realizing my tone might have sounded a bit preachy. Her job was just to protect the base and the scientists. She probably didn't even know what we were working on, and for her, an assignment here could be a career-long dead end. She must envy people with easier, freer assignments. My comment must have sounded like I was judging her. I started to explain awkwardly, "I didn't mean." Scarlett looked up, seemingly confused as to why I was apologizing. "I wasn't offended, sir. I just think you have a very high sense of duty. It's something to admire." Her words caught me off guard, and I felt my ears get hot. We rode the rest of the way in silence. The vehicle soon arrived at the main research complex. The gate guard inspected my luggage and took the access pass from Scarlett. I was about to ask if I should walk from here when the guard said something unexpected. "Sorry, you can't proceed." "What?" we both exclaimed in disbelief at the same time. I spoke up. "I have transfer orders. Why can't I enter?" "We don't know anything about orders, sir. We only recognize valid access passes. This one is expired. You can't go in." I looked from the guard to Scarlett, confused. Scarlett scratched her head sheepishly. I didn't need it on the way out this morning. I must have grabbed the wrong one in my haste. Hearing her explanation, I couldn't help but smile. So, what's the plan? Scarlett turned to the guard. Could you please notify General Miller's office that the new scientist has arrived? The guard didn't argue and made the call. A few minutes later, someone came to meet us. It wasn't the general, but the head of the research division, Dr. Evelyn Reed. General Miller was in charge of the entire base, the top commander. Dr. Reed was his second-in-command, director of the research facility, and the other senior scientist on the project. She exchanged a few words with the guard, and we were waved through. Dr. Reed gave us a brief nod of greeting and then hurried off, clearly busy. I watched her go, lost in thought, until Scarlett spoke up beside me. That's just how Dr. Reed is. Everyone calls her a research fanatic. She probably just rushed back to the lab. It's nothing personal. I hadn't taken it personally, but I appreciated her explanation. You seem to know everyone here pretty well. Not everyone, but I know most of them. I was silently impressed by her social skills as I followed her to my quarters. Since it wasn't far, Scarlett had someone else return the Humvee to the motor pool, and she walked with me. I looked around the facility, a powerful sense of purpose washing over me. When we reached my assigned housing, Scarlett handed me the key. Mr. Clark, this is your place. Let me know if you need anything. Do you want to get settled in first, or would you rather go meet the general and see the facility? I answered without hesitation. Let's see the general first. So I opened the door, dropped my suitcase inside, and followed her out again. Scarlett couldn't go into the general's office, so she waited for me in the lobby. I reported for duty, listened to the general's words of encouragement and expectation, and then headed back downstairs. Scarlett saw me coming down and came over. All set, sir? I can give you that tour now. I nodded, and so we began our tour of the research facility. Scarlett pointed things out as we walked. That's the mess hall. You can get all your meals there. Over there is the utility building, where the hot water is supplied. Pointing to the largest, most modern building on the complex, her eyes held a trace of awe. That's the main research lab. That's where you'll be working. We can't go in right now, but someone will bring you your security badge tonight and brief you on the protocols. I nodded. After the tour, Scarlett explained a few other things. We're pretty far from the nearest town, so we have a dedicated supply run. You can just put in a request for anything you need. She gave me a lot of helpful advice, which I took in gratefully. My appreciation for her helpfulness grew. I looked out at the vast expanse of desert and thought to myself, this is my life now. A life dedicated to my work, my ambitions, my future. 3 months later, I was in another heated argument with Dr. Reed, neither of us willing to concede an inch. I've told you, this approach is not supported by the data. It's a dead end, a complete waste of time and resources. How can you know it won't work if we don't even try? Besides, our current approach has hit a wall. Why not explore a new avenue? We'd had this same argument 100 times over the past 3 months. We were both dedicated scientists, both at the top of our fields, but our fundamental approaches were completely different. I was willing to take risks to propose bold new theories. Dr. Reed was more conservative, viewing anything too speculative as a waste of time and resources. This time was no different. I proposed a new line of inquiry, and she rejected it, saying it lacked a solid theoretical foundation and was based on nothing but my own intuition. But I had a strong feeling about it, and since we were stalled anyway, I thought it was worth a shot. We were at a standoff, neither of us backing down until it was time for lunch. One of our junior researchers quickly intervened. All right, Ethan, let's get some lunch. It's important to eat. I wanted to say I was too worked up to eat, but I knew he meant well, so I just followed him to the mess hall. My mind was consumed with how to get Dr. Reed to approve my proposal. My colleague shook his head with a helpless smile. Let it go for now, Ethan. Your food's getting cold. You two are both brilliant scientists. How did you end up being so equally stubborn? Outside of work, you're both perfectly reasonable people, but when it comes to the project, neither of you will budge. I listened to him and sighed. I wondered the same thing. Outside the lab, Dr. Reed was incredibly kind and helpful. Why was she so inflexible when it came to our work? As I ate distractedly, my colleague asked, Hey Ethan, did you put in an order with the supply run? They're due back today. I blinked. I had completely forgotten Scarlett was due back today. I nodded vaguely. The guy across from me sounded surprised. I think that's the first time I've ever seen you say yes to that. I gave a small laugh. It was true, I had never requested anything, even though Scarlett always asked before she left for town. This time, I had only asked for a skein of yarn and a crochet hook. For one, it was getting cold, and I wanted to make myself a scarf, hat, and gloves. For another, I wanted to make a pair of gloves for Scarlett, to thank her for all her help. I didn't have anything else to give her, so I thought I could at least make her something as a small token of my appreciation. Thanks to my colleague's reminder, I didn't forget. After work, I went to the main gate to wait for the supply truck. Unexpectedly, the truck was delayed, and I ended up waiting for a long time. When it finally arrived, I got in line to pick up my things. The soldier on the truck checked his list, found my package, and handed it to me. I checked to make sure it was all there, thanked him, and turned to leave, but then I heard a familiar voice call my name. Ethan. I froze. My brain slowly registered the voice. It sounded like Chloe. I turned, and there she was, wearing an army greatcoat, standing in the crowd. I had no idea why Chloe was here, but I wanted nothing to do with her. I turned and walked away. Seeing me treat her like a complete stranger, a sharp pain shot through Chloe's heart. She started to follow me, but was stopped by the soldier she was with. "Colonel, what are you doing? We're not done with distribution yet, and we still have to return the truck after this." He rattled off a list of tasks, making Chloe's head spin. He held her arm so she couldn't get away, and by then I was long gone. Chloe sighed. She would have to find me later. After all, she had been transferred here. There would be other chances to see me. Meanwhile, I put Chloe's appearance out of my mind, went back to my room, and started to crochet. The small stove in my room was already lit, its flames burning brightly, making the whole place feel warm and cozy. On my days off, I usually just stayed in and read. Sometimes I'd go for a walk, but it had been so cold lately that I hadn't even felt like leaving my room. Now that I had my yarn, I had something to occupy my time. I worked from memory, the yarn and hook moving deftly in my hands. Before long, the shape of a glove began to emerge. My hands kept moving, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about how, when spring came and the weather warmed up, I would explore the surrounding area. I had heard the ancient cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde were incredible, and I had always been fascinated by the craftsmanship of the ancestral Puebloans. I wanted to see them for myself. After a few months here, I had a good grasp of the base's rules and regulations. Outsiders needed special clearance to get on base, but for us, there weren't too many restrictions on leaving, as long as we submitted a request and stated our destination. It was a top-secret facility, after all. Every movement had to be logged and filed. I had helped someone else with the paperwork once, so I knew the procedure. Most people found it too much of a hassle and just stayed on base, but I was eager to explore the area. After crocheting for a while, I dozed off at my desk. When I woke up, it was already dark outside. I cursed under my breath. The mess hall would be closing soon, and there probably wouldn't be much food left. I might have to go hungry tonight. Still, holding out a sliver of hope, I decided to go check. Since I always ate at the mess hall, I didn't keep any food in my room. I grabbed my meal tray and ticket and opened the door, only to find Scarlett standing there, holding a food container, her hand raised to knock. We both froze for a second. Scarlett recovered first, holding out the container. "Mr. Clark, I didn't see you at the mess hall tonight. I was worried you might not be feeling well. They were about to close, so I took the liberty of bringing you something." I looked at the container, at a loss for words. Scarlett quickly added, "The container is new. It's never been used." There was no other option, and I couldn't let myself go hungry. I took the container, thanked her, and tried to give her my meal ticket. Scarlett waved her hands, refusing. "No need for that, sir. You keep it." When she refused, I put on a mock-stern expression. "If you don't take it, then I can't accept the food." Only then did she take the ticket, reminding me that the food was probably cold and that I should heat it up. With that, she turned and left. I took the food inside, completely unaware of a pair of eyes watching me from the darkness nearby. It was Chloe. Chloe stood in the shadows, having watched the entire exchange, a storm of pain and anger brewing inside her. Had it really only been 3 months, and Ethan had already found someone new? No wonder he acted like she didn't exist. No wonder he had left so decisively, and turned his back on her so coldly when he saw her again. What was the point of her giving up her command to come here, to be a simple perimeter guard? What was the point of leaving her comfortable life for this desolate place? Chloe's whole body was trembling, whether from the cold or from rage, she couldn't tell. Her hands were clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms, but she didn't feel a thing. She instinctively started to walk towards my room, but after only 2 steps, someone called out to her. "Colonel, what are you doing out here so late? This is the scientists' housing area. Our barracks are on the other side of the base." Chloe turned to see the soldier from the supply run. For a moment, she didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Luckily, the soldier made an excuse for her. Are you lost? It's easy to get turned around when you're new here. Chloe seized the opportunity and nodded. Yes, I am. Sorry to be a bother. The soldier laughed good-naturedly and clapped her on the shoulder. No bother at all. I'll walk you back. But you should remember it's best not to wander over to this area, especially these few quarters. This is the men's housing. Understood. I'll remember that. The soldier said no more and led her away in the opposite direction. Unlike my small, brick-built quarters, Chloe was housed in the adobe barracks, where the enlisted soldiers lived, often 2 or more to a room. The soldier led her to her assigned room. As fate would have it, she was bunking with Scarlett. It was the only room with a spare cot. Scarlett, oblivious to our history and unaware that Chloe now saw her as a rival, greeted her warmly. Colonel, what a coincidence. Looks like we're roommates. The sight of Scarlett brought back the image from my doorway, and Chloe responded with a curt, yes. Scarlett was confused. On the truck ride back, the colonel had been so friendly and easy to talk to. Why was she being so cold now? But she didn't dwell on it, assuming Chloe was just in a bad mood. When Chloe had arrived in the nearby town, she had been wondering how to get to the base when she ran into Scarlett and the supply team. After Chloe showed them her ID and transfer orders, Scarlett had offered her a ride back with them. On the way, the two of them had gotten along wonderfully, hitting it off immediately. Scarlett wasn't nosy or gossipy, and her easygoing conversation had made Chloe feel very comfortable. She had thought they could become good friends, but then she had returned to see that scene between Scarlett and me. For the first time, Chloe really looked at Scarlett, studying her for a long moment. She couldn't see anything special about her. She wasn't my type at all. She told herself she was overthinking it. Maybe they were just friends. But would friends act the way they had? Chloe didn't want to think about it anymore. She just felt an overwhelming sense of frustration. She lay in bed for a long time, wide awake. Listening to Scarlett's even breathing, she didn't dare toss and turn for fear of waking her. She lay there, eyes open, until morning. A few days later, Chloe was assigned to guard duty at the entrance to the main research building. From a distance, she saw me approaching with another researcher, a strikingly beautiful woman. We were laughing and talking, looking for all the world like close friends. Were they just friends? He had made new friends here, but Chloe had no way of knowing for sure. It made her even more frustrated, because she realized she knew nothing about my life now. Suppressing her irritation, she greeted us as we approached. Good morning. I just nodded and walked past her into the building. The researcher with me, however, replied politely, good morning. Then she hurried to catch up with me. Dr. Reed glanced back, a curious expression on her face at my coldness. In her experience, I was always polite and friendly, usually the first to say hello. My unusual behavior made her suspect there was some history between me and the guard, but she wasn't one to pry. If I didn't offer an explanation, she wouldn't ask for one. Our last argument had ended when General Miller had given the final approval for me to test my theory. Dr. Reed hadn't argued further. The decision had been made and she was a professional. Once inside the building, we went our separate ways to our respective labs. We rarely interacted unless it was work-related. The daily research was tedious but demanded intense focus. I was exhausted by the end of the day. When I left the building, I didn't see Chloe and breathed a quiet sigh of relief. While she no longer had any power over my emotions, the way she looked at me was bound to make people suspicious. I didn't want to explain our past to anyone, so the sight of her just gave me a headache. Thank goodness she wasn't on duty today. Back in my room, I looked at the finished pair of gloves on my desk and wondered how I should give them to Scarlett. I hadn't seen her around lately and wondered what she'd been up to, but I felt too awkward to go looking for her at the barracks. Just as I was debating what to do, there was a knock on my door. Speak of the devil. The moment I opened the door and saw Scarlett, the old saying popped into my head, and I couldn't help but smile. Scarlett looked completely baffled. Mr. Clark, what's so funny? Quickly shook my head. Scarlett, you're just the person I wanted to see. I have something for you. I turned and went back inside to get it. When Scarlett took the gloves, her face was a mixture of shock and delight, with delight quickly winning out. She asked, her voice full of disbelief, "Are these for me?" I nodded. "To thank you for all your help. I know I've been a bother these past few months, but you've never once complained and have always been so patient and helpful. I really appreciate it." Scarlett looked down, embarrassed by my thanks. "It's just my job, sir. You don't have to thank me." Despite her words, she immediately tried on the gloves. They were a perfect fit. "Thank you, sir. This is the first time anyone's ever given me a gift." I was happy she liked them. I never quite mastered my mother's technique, so they're not perfect. I hope you don't mind. Scarlett quickly shook her head. Not at all, they're wonderful. Then, her expression clouded over as she added quietly, I never knew my mother. I was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. But she quickly changed the subject. I almost forgot why I came. They're having a table tennis tournament tonight. Are you not playing? Life on the base was simple, but not without its comforts. According to Scarlett, people often got together after work for games of table tennis or basketball. But it had been too cold during the winter, so they hadn't played in a while. I was surprised they were holding a tournament tonight. My eyes lit up and I nodded. So we headed over to the recreation hall together. Scarlett watched me walk ahead, a complex and conflicted expression in her eyes. The moment we left, Chloe emerged from the shadows. She had been about to come talk to me, but had stumbled upon that scene instead. If Scarlett bringing me dinner was just a friendly gesture, then what did me giving her handmade gloves mean? Chloe didn't want to admit it, but she couldn't deny the possibility. I might have fallen in love with someone else. The dull ache in her chest sharpened into a twisting knife, the pain so intense it took her breath away. Her hands, hanging at her sides, began to tremble. She didn't know what to do or where to go. Her mind went blank, and she just stood there, frozen. She didn't know how long she stood there, but when she finally came to, I was standing in front of her again. I was startled to see Chloe standing in front of my door. It wasn't her presence that surprised me, but her dazed, vacant expression. I cursed under my breath. So much for my good mood. Still, I walked up to her and asked, my tone sharp, what do you want? Chloe had wanted to talk to me about us, but now she wasn't sure if there was any point. She just stared at me, speechless. Since she wasn't talking, I had no desire to engage. I started to walk around her to go inside. Just as I was about to close the door, I heard her trembling voice. Ethan, can we talk? I wanted to tell her we had nothing to talk about, but I figured it might be better to get things out in the open. I couldn't have her ambushing me on base all the time. I let her into my room. Come in. Chloe followed me inside and sat down. I handed her a glass of water. Say what you need to say. Ethan, I was wrong in the past. I'm sorry. There's no need to bring up the past. Besides, you did nothing wrong. It's not your fault you didn't love me. It just took me too long to realize it. Her voice grew urgent. That's not it. I do love you. I stared at her, then let out a laugh. What did you just say? Chloe explained in a low voice. Ethan, I do love you. I just realized it too late. It wasn't until you were gone that I understood I had fallen in love with you a long time ago. I've already ended things with Ryan. It was all my fault. I was so foolish. My expression was complex. So you're saying you've now realized it's me you love, not Ryan? And that's why you came all the way out here? Yes. Ethan, I know I made so many mistakes. Can you please give me a chance to make it up to you? She looked at me, her eyes full of emotion. A bitter smile touched my lips. But Chloe, I'm not in love with you anymore. My love for you was worn away, day by day, by your coldness. Our conversation shattered all of Chloe's hopes. My words, I'm not in love with you anymore, echoed in her mind. How could that be? How could I say something so cruel? The man who had loved her so much, how could he just stop? Her thoughts were in turmoil, and a deep ache seemed to spread through her entire body. When she returned to her barracks, her face was so pale it startled Scarlett. Scarlett quickly helped her to her cot, handed her a cup of hot water, and asked with concern, Colonel, are you all right? The sight of Scarlett's face made Chloe angry, but she told herself not to drag an innocent person into this. So, with a strained expression, she said she was fine, handed the cup back, and lay down. Scarlett had been about to suggest the clinic, but seeing Chloe's state, she decided against it, turned off the light, and got into her own cot. That night, it began to snow again. By morning, a thick blanket of snow covered the ground, and it was still coming down. I added an extra layer of clothing, put on my scarf and gloves, and headed out to the lab. The moment I opened the door, I was dazzled by the sight of the world covered in white. I suddenly remembered how, in my last life, I had always wanted to watch the snow with Chloe, but we never had. I never had any particular feelings about snow, but the old romantics on base always quoted that old saying, to share a snow-covered path is to walk together into old age, and it had always stuck with me. But now I just gave a bitter smile. Romance aside, a clear path was much easier to walk on. By the third time I nearly slipped and fell, my frustration with the snow had reached its peak. As I was carefully navigating a downhill slope, I lost my footing and almost went down. Luckily, someone caught me from behind. I was about to turn and thank them when I saw it was Chloe. I immediately pulled my arm away. Chloe noticed my reaction and gave a bitter smile. Even in a situation like this, I wanted nothing to do with her. She felt a sharp, twisting pain in her chest, so intense it was hard to breathe. But when she saw me stumble again, she instinctively reached out to help. But another hand reached me first. "Mr. Clark, be careful." Scarlett had caught my arm, steadying me. Seeing it was her, I smiled and thanked her. "This slope is pretty icy, and there's nothing to hold on to. Why don't we help each other until we get to the flat part? It'll be easier from there." The last few times it had snowed, it was just a light dusting, mostly packed down by the time I went out. I hadn't realized how treacherous this slope would be with such heavy snow. It was nearly impossible to get down the slope alone, so I agreed to her suggestion. After thanking her again, I took her arm, and we carefully made our way forward. Chloe stood frozen, watching us, and didn't move until we had reached level ground and I had disappeared around a corner. I treated her completely differently than I treated everyone else. With everyone else here, I was friendly and smiling. In just a few months, I had built a reputation for being easygoing and approachable. When people talked about me, they would say things like, "Ethan is so kind and polite and so passionate about his work. Any woman would be lucky to marry him." Every time she heard things like that, it felt like a knife in her heart. She had once had that version of me, but now it seemed he was gone forever. After all those years together, it had ended in a quiet divorce, and I had left for this place without a word to her. And now, when I looked at her, my eyes were completely empty of love, colder than if she were a complete stranger. Every time she thought about it, Chloe wanted to slap herself. How could she have been so blind? She remembered the way I used to smile while cooking for her, and the look of disappointment on my face when she wouldn't eat. She remembered the times I tried to get close, only to be pushed away by her icy stare. Even when I had decided on divorce, I had still tried to honor my promise to her mother and keep her safe. And what had she done? She had thrown cruel, hateful words at me. She couldn't bear to think about it now. Every time the memory surfaced, her heart clenched with pain. She had flaunted her affection for Ryan right in front of me, cared for his every need, and never gave me, her actual husband, a shred of respect in public. Day by day, she had chipped away at my loving heart until there was nothing left but scars. The images flashed through her mind, and Chloe wished she could go back in time and stop herself from treating me so horribly. But she couldn't. What was done was done. The damage was permanent. All she could do now was try to make up for it, again and again, hoping that one day I might forgive her. I said hello to the team in the main lab, then went to the back office to find Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed was at her desk, as usual, reviewing the previous day's data. When she saw me, she looked up with a warm smile and greeted me. "Was the walk-in difficult this morning?" I thought about my treacherous journey and nodded. "Extremely difficult." Dr. Reed chuckled. "Well, be careful. It's no problem if you're a few minutes late." I nodded to show I understood. After the brief pleasantries, we got straight to work. Dr. Reed showed me the data from yesterday's test run. The results were completely inconsistent with the previous run, another useless dataset. None of the test results showed any correlation, which meant our current approach was fundamentally flawed. We were both silent for a moment. I had fought so hard for this line of inquiry. I had been so sure it would work. I never expected it to end in another failure. We had failed again. They say that success is built on a mountain of failures, but the process of accumulating all those failures is agonizing. Dr. Reed looked at my crestfallen expression, but instead of saying, "I told you so," she offered a quiet word of encouragement. "Well, it's not a total loss. At least we've eliminated one more incorrect possibility. If you don't know how to comfort someone, it's better not to try." The junior researcher who came in with a new data file heard her and had to resist the urge to say so. But with the test results being so poor, everyone was in a foul mood, so he just dropped off the file and left without a word. We spent the rest of the morning in a funk, unable to come up with any new ideas or find a way forward. For once, the two of us were in the same room without arguing, so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. At noon, Dr. Reed asked if I wanted to join her and two of the other female scientists for lunch. I agreed, and we headed to the mess hall. I usually ate with members of my team, which often meant eating with Dr. Reed. This time, we were joined by two other women I didn't know well, but I didn't think anything of it at first. But as more and more curious glances were thrown our way, I started to feel a bit self-conscious. Dr. Reed seemed completely oblivious, focusing on her food and occasionally sharing a new idea that had just occurred to her. Gradually, I managed to ignore the stares and focus on our conversation. We talked animatedly, our ideas bouncing off each other, sparking new insights and inspiration. Soon, the other curious glances faded away, but one remained, Chloe's. She was sitting in a corner, watching us talk and laugh, her grip on her fork so tight her knuckles were white. How had she never realized I could be so charming with other women, so easy to talk to and laugh with? I had never been that way with her. Chloe suddenly realized that she and I had rarely ever just talked, and when we did, it was almost always unpleasant. She had rarely seen me smile so freely. When I was with her, I had always been so careful, always walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate her moods and please her. Even in our most intimate moments, her pleasure had always been my priority. And she, in turn, had rarely ever considered my feelings, taking my love for granted and doing whatever she pleased. Some things were better left unexamined. The more she thought about it, the more horrified she became. She searched her memory but couldn't find a single instance of her ever being truly kind to me. She couldn't understand what had been wrong with her, how she could have been so blind, how she could have pushed a man who loved her so deeply to the point where he would leave her without a second thought. Our discussion continued, but Chloe couldn't bear to watch any longer. The gentle way I used to look only at her was now something I shared with everyone else, but never with her. She got up and left the mess hall. The sun was shining brightly outside, but inside Chloe's heart, dark clouds were gathering, threatening a storm that would wash everything away. She stared into the distance, a sudden, crushing feeling that her chances of ever winning me back were practically zero. After a lunch filled with productive discussion, my earlier funk had completely vanished, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. When we returned to the lab that afternoon, our team members looked at us as if we were imposters, a complete transformation from our gloomy morning selves. I had not only shaken off my own bad mood, but I had also managed to rally the team. I called a quick meeting, encouraging everyone not to lose hope, that we would overcome this hurdle, and that success was within our grasp. The pep talk worked. When we left the meeting room, everyone was fired up and ready to get back to work. If one path was blocked, we would simply find another. The team dove back into brainstorming and data analysis, determined to find the right path forward. Once we had the right direction, the rest would just be a matter of time. The hard part was finding that direction. People had been searching for years, and still no one had found it. The days slipped by one after another. Before I knew it, the cottonwood trees planted on the base were sprouting new leaves. Spring had arrived. I had been looking forward to spring. Once the weather warmed up, I could finally go out and explore. But before I could make any plans of my own, the base announced its own activities. During the cold winter months, people mostly kept to themselves, occasionally gathering for a quiet game of cards or some indoor exercise. But now that the weather was warmer, all sorts of recreational activities were back on the table. First on the list was an outdoor movie night. The logistics department announced that they would be setting up a screen in an open area after dinner for an outdoor movie. Everyone was excited about it. The women on my team had been talking about it all day, their excitement palpable. I loved movies too, especially outdoor screenings like this. There was a special, communal feeling to it that I found very comforting. After dinner, I carried my folding chair over to the designated spot, where a large crowd had already gathered. People were sharing snacks, chatting happily in small groups, while children ran around playing in the distance. I loved the atmosphere. In my last life, I had loved the movie nights in the base housing area, but over time, as more families got their own TVs, people stopped organizing them. Everyone grew more distant. Everyone retreated into their own little worlds, and the sense of community faded. "Ethan, my wife roasted these peanuts. Want a handful?" The sudden voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked at the unfamiliar face, managed to smile, and took a handful of the peanuts, thanking him. The movie was about to start, and I felt someone sit down next to me. I turned my head. It was Chloe. I didn't say anything, just shifted my chair a little further away. Chloe didn't move closer. She didn't even look at me, her eyes fixed on the screen. But the way her hands kept clenching and unclenching betrayed her inner turmoil. She knew she shouldn't have sat next to me. I had told her point blank to leave me alone. She shouldn't have approached me. But Chloe just couldn't stay away. She had hesitated in the back for a long time before finally, just a moment before the movie started, moving her chair up next to mine. I was so focused on getting away from Chloe that I didn't realize I had moved right next to Scarlett, our shoulders nearly touching. Scarlett noticed and quickly shifted over a little, giving me some space. I shot her a grateful glance. Scarlett leaned in and whispered, "Ethan, do you know Colonel Chloe from before?" I shook my head. "No. Is there some kind of problem between you two, then? It just seems like you go out of your way to avoid her." I shook my head again. "No, you're imagining things." We were speaking quietly, but Chloe had sharp hearing. She heard every single word. I was trying so hard to distance myself from her, to pretend we had no connection, to keep our past a secret from everyone. The man who used to boast to anyone who would listen that his wife was the incredible Colonel Chloe was gone. Her Ethan didn't just want to erase their future, he wanted to erase their past as well. The movie was over before I knew it. I had really enjoyed it, and I stayed to discuss the plot with Scarlett afterward. Chloe, however, hadn't seen a single frame. Her mind was racing, trying to figure out a way to earn my forgiveness. After all this time, she no longer dreamed of winning me back completely. She would be happy if I just stopped avoiding her like the plague. Seeing the two of us still deep in conversation after the movie, Chloe's irritation flared up again. She walked over and pulled Scarlett to her feet. "Scarlett, the movie's over. We should get back and get ready for bed." I watched as Chloe abruptly pulled Scarlett away, wondering what on earth had gotten into her now. Back when I was the one chasing her, she had ignored me, treated me like I was invisible. I gave her the divorce she wanted, and now she follows me all the way out here. I'd laid all my cards on the table, told her it was over, but she still wouldn't leave, still found ways to be around me every day. How had I never realized before how infuriating Chloe could be? The face I had once been so captivated by now only served to irritate me. I stood up, said goodnight to Scarlett, and went back to my room. The next day, when I walked to the research building, I saw that Chloe was on guard duty again. I sighed in frustration and walked past her into the building without a word. I greeted the various team members and then went to focus on my work. After that last productive conversation with Dr. Reed, we had found a promising new direction and had recently begun a new series of tests. If this was successful, we might not be far from completing our objective. When I was engrossed in my work, time flew by. I was so focused on recording the data that I didn't notice the time passing. By the time I looked up, it was already past lunch. It wasn't until one of my colleagues returned from the mess hall and said hello that I realized I'd missed the meal. I wasn't particularly hungry, so I decided to just skip it, but I had been cooped up in the lab all morning and needed some fresh air. But as soon as I stepped outside, I saw Chloe waiting at the bottom of the steps, holding a food container. She hurried over as soon as she saw me. "Ethan, I noticed you didn't come down all morning. I figured you must have missed lunch, so I brought you something." She held out the container to me. I didn't take it. I even took a step back, putting some distance between us. "Thank you, but I'm not hungry." My tone was as cold as ever. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, but she quickly recovered, forcing a smile. "You have to eat something. I got all your favorites." I was at the end of my rope. I took a deep breath. "Chloe, I told you to stay away from me. What is it that you want?" "I was just worried you were hungry, so I brought you some food." "What's so wrong with that? Why is it okay for you to take food from Scarlett, but not from me?" My coldness finally broke through her composure, and the words tumbled out in a rush of frustration. She immediately regretted it and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean that." I stared at her, stunned, then just muttered, "You're unbelievable," and walked away. I left her standing there alone, holding the container. She felt a dull ache in her stomach. Lifting her shirt, she saw a large red mark on her skin. The weather was warm enough that the food wouldn't have gotten cold, but Chloe had wanted to make sure it was still hot for me, so she had carried the container under her jacket the whole way, and I hadn't even given it a second glance. Chloe felt a pang of sadness, but then reminded herself that she deserved it. Compared to the pain I had endured for years, my current coldness was a mercy. She couldn't expect too much. She had to take it one step at a time. Eventually, the ice between us would have to break. Giving herself a silent pep talk, Chloe carried the food back to her barracks. Now that the weather was warmer, I could finally put my plans into motion. On my next day off, I submitted a request for off-base leave and to borrow one of the base's bicycles. The base kept a few old-fashioned, sturdy bikes in a shed for personnel to use. Anyone who wanted to use one just had to file a request. I had been wanting to visit Mesa Verde for a long time. I had asked some colleagues about it and they suggested cycling. It was a full day's trip, but doable. When I handed my leave request to Dr. Reed, she asked, as a matter of procedure, "What's the purpose of your trip? When will you be back?" "I'm just going to see the cliff dwellings. I'll be back before dark." After the brief, official questions, she nodded, stamped my form, and then asked in a more friendly tone, "Do you know how to get there? It would be easy to get lost if you go by yourself. Some of the guys on the team gave me directions. I should be fine," I replied, appreciating her concern. Just as I was about to leave, she stopped me. "You know, I just remembered I have an errand to run in that direction. If you don't mind the company, maybe we could go together." Of course, I didn't mind. Having someone along who knew the area would make it much less likely for me to get lost. And so it was settled. I was in a great mood when I left the building, especially when I saw the clear, cloudless sky. I hadn't gone far when Scarlett walked up to me. "What are you so happy about?" I told her the truth. "I'm going to Mesa Verde tomorrow." Hearing this, Scarlett's eyes lit up. "I'm actually heading that way with Dr. Reed tomorrow for an errand. Can we ride with you?" I readily agreed. Of course, the more the merrier. After we made our plans, I started to head back, but after only a few steps, the smile vanished from my face. Chloe was standing a short distance away, waiting for me. I sighed. I couldn't understand why Chloe was always there, like a persistent ghost. I thought I had made myself perfectly clear, and from what I remembered of her, Chloe was not the type to be clingy. She had always disdained that kind of behavior. I was about to walk past and ignore her, but she spoke first. "I heard you put in for leave. Where are you going?" News certainly travels fast around here, I thought. The words that came out of my mouth were blunt. "Colonel, I don't see how that's any of your business." She was taken aback for a second, then explained in a low voice, "I didn't mean anything by it. I was just worried about you going off on your own, in a place you don't know. Could be dangerous. You don't need to worry. I'm not going alone, and I won't be in any danger." With that, I walked away without another word. Chloe wanted to ask who I was going with, but the questions caught in her throat. All she could do was watch my retreating back. But she had already gotten her own leave request approved, planning to follow me the next day, partly in the hope of getting me alone, but mostly out of a genuine concern for my safety. The next day, when Chloe wheeled her own bike out, all she saw were the retreating figures of me, Dr. Reed, and Scarlett riding off together. Chloe's hands tightened on her handlebars, her grip so strong it felt like she might snap them. I was completely unaware that Chloe was following us. I just stuck to the plan. The ride with Dr. Reed and Scarlett was surprisingly pleasant. At work, Dr. Reed was a machine, but outside the lab, she was witty and funny, telling a string of jokes and anecdotes that had Scarlett and me laughing the whole way. We rode over rolling hills until we finally came to a small town. We were parched from the ride, so we stopped to ask for some water, chatted for a few minutes with a local who had a thick accent, and then got back on the road. The road to the park wasn't much further, but it was rough and uneven, making for a difficult ride. Even though I was a decent cyclist, I was still drenched in sweat by the time we arrived. Dr. Reed, Scarlett, and I parted ways at a fork in the road. Before she left, Dr. Reed asked with concern, "Ethan, how long do you think you'll be? Do you want me to meet you back here when I'm done with my errand, so we can ride back together?" I shook my head. "No, that's all right. I've got the route memorized. I can get back on my own." Dr. Reed didn't press the issue, just told me to head back before it got too late, and then she and Scarlett rode off. I finally reached the park around noon. I grabbed a quick bite at a small diner nearby, then went into the park alone. The countless cliff dwellings were like time capsules, each one telling a story of this place, each one holding a unique charm. The petroglyphs were varied and intricate, and I found myself completely captivated. My mother had told me stories about this place countless times, but nothing could have prepared me for the awe of seeing it with my own eyes. My mother's family was from this area, but she had followed my father's career and rarely had a chance to come back. More than once, I had found my mother sitting by the window, staring up at the moon. When I was little, I would ask her, "Mom, what are you looking at?" "The moon. What's so special about the moon?" "In the moon, you can see the people you miss. You can see home." It was only later that I understood she was homesick, missing the home she so rarely got to visit. I knew she had desperately wanted to go back, but my father's work was too demanding. She passed away without ever seeing her childhood home again. That's why she had told me so many stories about the desert, about the petroglyphs and the cliff dwellings. She had filled me with a longing to see it for myself, to see the place where she had grown up. And now I was finally here, seeing it with my own eyes. It was just as she had described, full of a quiet, powerful beauty. While I was lost in the history and art of the place, Chloe had quietly arrived outside the park. She didn't come inside. She knew I wouldn't be happy to see her, so she stayed out of sight. But no matter how much I might resent her presence, she wasn't going to leave me out here alone in an unfamiliar place. She was worried about my safety. Even though she had been angry to see me with other people, she had still followed without a second thought. If something were to happen to me, she would never forgive herself. Waiting outside was miserable. Mosquitoes swarmed around her, feasting on her as if she were the only person for miles. She had to stay vigilant, in case I left without her noticing. And she had to remain hidden, because if I saw her, I would be furious, and might even find a way to force her to leave, which would make her entire trip pointless. I lost track of time and stayed in the park for hours. By the time I came out, the sun was already setting. I cursed myself. I had only meant to stay for a little while, but I had gotten so absorbed that I'd lost all track of time. I quickly got on my bike and started heading back. The sun was sinking fast, so I picked up my pace, but in my haste, I hit a bump in the road and went flying off my bike. Normally, a fall from an old bike like that wouldn't be a big deal. You just pick it up and get back on. But because I had been rushing, I landed badly and twisted my ankle. A sharp, searing pain shot through my ankle, and I broke out in a cold sweat. Just as I was wondering what to do, an anxious voice called out, "Ethan!" I heard the clatter of another bicycle hitting the ground and the sound of someone running towards me. I managed to look up and saw Chloe's worried face. "Ethan, are you okay? Where are you hurt?" She pulled the bike off me and helped me try to stand up. "Can you stand?" I tried, but a sharp, drilling pain made me cry out. Chloe immediately stopped, helping me sit back down on the ground. I sat there for a few minutes until the worst of the pain subsided. "I think it's just a sprain," I said. "It's not serious. I just need a minute." Chloe waited for me to catch my breath, quickly calculating the distance in her head. She decided we should head back to the town we had passed through. There might be a doctor there, but if we go back there, we'll never make it back to the base tonight. Even if we can't, at least we'll have a place to stay for the night. You can't ride your bike in your condition anyway. I couldn't argue with that. So, in the end, Chloe ended up riding her bike with me on the back, while I awkwardly held onto my own bike, steering it alongside us. It wasn't the safest way to travel, but we couldn't just leave a piece of government property behind. If it got stolen, we'd be in big trouble. To make sure I didn't fall off, Chloe had to ride very slowly, so the short distance back to town took a long time. By the time we reached the town, it was already dark, and most of the houses were dark as well. Chloe found one house with a light still on and knocked on the door. "Hello? We're just passing through. Could you please open the door?" After a few knocks, the door creaked open. A man holding a kerosene lamp looked us over and asked in a thick local accent, "What do you folks want?" Chloe hesitated for a second, then replied, "Sir, we were just passing through, and my friend here sprained his ankle. We were wondering if there's a doctor in town who could take a look at it." After Chloe's earnest explanation, the man looked us over one more time before finally letting us in. "Come on in. It's getting cold out there. You're in luck. The town's doctor just happens to be visiting. I'll go get him for you." With that, he disappeared into another room. I had trouble understanding his accent, but I gathered that he was going to get a doctor, so I sat down and waited quietly. A few moments later, a man came in carrying a medical bag, his clothes hastily thrown on, looking like he had just been woken up. I apologized sheepishly. "Sorry to bother you so late at night." The doctor waved it off. "Don't mention it. Helping people is what I do." Hearing that, I just gave him a grateful smile. The doctor gently probed my ankle, asking about the pain, and I answered his questions. The doctor nodded and gave his diagnosis. It was just dislocated. He could pop it right back into place. And with that, he went to work. With a sickening crack, a wave of pain so intense it took my breath away washed over me. I was too stunned to even cry out. Chloe had been about to protest his rough methods, but before she could even get the word "wait" out, it was over. Then she saw the look of agony on my face. She quickly leaned over me. "Ethan, are you okay? Where does it hurt?" I was in too much pain to answer. It was the doctor who answered. "He's fine. That's normal. The worst of the pain will pass in a moment, and then he'll be able to walk." After a long moment, I finally felt my senses return, and I let out a long, shaky breath. "Try standing up," the doctor said. "See how it feels." Seeing that I had recovered a bit, Chloe helped me to my feet. I tested it, and to my surprise, the pain was gone. I pushed her hand away gently and took a few steps on my own. I was able to walk normally. I quickly turned to the doctor and thanked him. "Thank you, doctor. The pain is gone. I feel fine." The doctor nodded. "Just be careful with it for a few days. You don't want to dislocate it again." "Okay, I will." With my ankle fixed, I stood up to say our goodbyes. "Thank you all for your help today. It's getting late, so we won't trouble you any further." Chloe looked surprised. "You want to leave now?" I nodded. Chloe glanced outside at the dark sky. "Maybe we should wait until morning?" "No, my leave is only for today. If we go back tomorrow, we could be disciplined." I shook my head firmly. I didn't want to get in trouble, and I certainly didn't want to get Chloe in trouble, so it was better to go back tonight. But on this point, Chloe was adamant. "It's not safe to go back now." The doctor chimed in as well. "He's right, son. It's not safe to be out on these roads at night. There are coyotes in these parts. Better to face a reprimand than to risk your life. I was about to argue, but as if on cue, the howl of some unseen animal echoed in the distance, sending a chill down my spine. I've always been a stickler for the rules. I've lived my whole life by the book, always following orders. But in this situation, it seemed like we had no choice but to wait until morning. The doctor was right. Even if it meant getting disciplined, it was better than risking our lives. And so we ended up staying the night. The family lived in a small, 2-room adobe house and had no spare room to offer us. I didn't mind. Any shelter was better than being out in the cold. We ended up agreeing to spend the night sitting in their kitchen. The kind, simple man apologized profusely in his thick accent, saying he was sorry for the inconvenience. Normally, we might have tried to find another place to stay, but it was so late we didn't want to wake anyone else up. I waved my hands, trying to reassure him. We were the ones who had imposed on him, yet he was the one apologizing. It made me feel very awkward. You've already done more than enough by giving us a place to stay. We're very grateful. After finally persuading the man to leave us, Chloe and I were left alone in the kitchen. We sat in silence, the only sound for a long time the crackling of the fire in the wood stove. The flickering firelight danced on our faces, obscuring our expressions.
Isait, breaking the silence.
Thank you for today. Took Chloe a moment to respond. You don't have to thank me, as long as you're okay. I didn't ask her why she had been there. The answer was obvious, and asking would only have made things more awkward. So I changed the subject. How long has it been since we've just sat and talked like this, so peacefully? Chloe thought back. The last time they had shared a peaceful meal and conversation was the night before I left. And even then, she had left halfway through because Ryan had a fever and needed her. She realized only later that I had been trying to say a proper goodbye, and she had walked out on even that. The memory brought a sharp pain to her chest. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She had apologized 1,000 times, but apologies couldn't erase the hurt she had caused. We sat in silence for a long time before I spoke again. Chloe, let go of the past. It's time to move on. You should too. Chloe said nothing, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. We sat there in silence until the sun came up. Early the next morning, we said our goodbyes to the family and started the ride back to the base. As soon as I got back to the base, I went straight to Dr. Reed's office to explain what had happened and apologize. I'm very sorry, Dr. Reed. I sprained my ankle last night and wasn't able to make it back. I had to stay the night in town. Ethan, I believe you, but you know the regulations. I have to ask you a few questions. First, is there anyone who can corroborate your story? I had expected this. After a moment's hesitation, I said, Colonel Chloe can verify it, and the family that took us in can also verify it. Dr. Reed looked surprised. Why would Colonel Chloe be able to verify it? I sighed and forced the words out. Because she was with me last night. Before she could even process that, I delivered another shock. Colonel Chloe is my ex-wife. We used to be married. Dr. Reed seemed to be at a loss for words. Why wasn't this in your file? There's no mention of it in your security clearance. I hadn't wanted to bring any of this up, but the credibility of my story depended on it. General Miller is aware of the situation, I said. As for the official record, I had it redacted when I requested my transfer. I didn't want people here to know about our past. Since the general was aware, Dr. Reed had no further questions. She just asked me to write up a formal statement. They would send someone to verify the details later. It was just a formality for the record. I knew the protocol. I nodded and left her office. I thought that would be the end of it, but a few days later, I was urgently summoned to General Miller's office. I had no idea what it was about, but from the look on his face, it wasn't good news. I didn't know what was going on, and the heavy silence in the room was making me nervous. I asked cautiously, General, you wanted to see me? The general didn't answer, just continued to study me with a hard expression. Then he asked, Mr. Clark, you signed a security agreement when you joined this project, did you not? I didn't know where this was going, but I answered, yes, sir. He nodded. Then you are aware of the penalty for compromising classified national security information? Hearing that, a cold feeling of dread washed over me. Just as I feared, he continued, we have reason to believe that someone has been leaking core secrets from this project. And the only two people with access to that information who have recently been off base are you and Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed has been on this project for years. I know her character. But you, the accusation hung in the air, a crushing weight. General, I'm innocent, I exclaimed. You can investigate me. I just went to see the cliff dwellings. I would never betray my country. But our preliminary investigation indicates otherwise. The people in the town say they never saw you. You lied. My eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible. There has to be some kind of mistake. Perhaps. But in the meantime, Mr. Clark, I'm afraid you'll have to cooperate with our investigation. He gave a nod to the two MPs standing behind me, and just like that, I was escorted away. I was put in a small, dark holding cell without a word of explanation. I didn't even have time to process what was happening. My mind was reeling. I couldn't understand how things had escalated so quickly. I kept thinking someone would come to question me, to investigate, and I would have a chance to explain, to clear my name. But for 3 days, there was nothing. No one came to question me. The only person I saw was the guard who brought my meals. I didn't see the general, and I didn't see Dr. Reed. I tried to get information from the guard, but she remained silent, refusing to tell me anything. In complete isolation, I felt like I was going insane, on the verge of a complete breakdown. Finally, on the 5th day, Dr. Reed came to see me. I had 100 explanations ready, but I never got to use any of them. She came in, her face full of apology. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. You've been through a lot. It's over now. You're free to go." They had locked me up for a week without a single question, and now they were just letting me go? I was confused and angry, and it must have shown on my face. "I'd like to know what the hell is going on." Dr. Reed had clearly come to explain. She dismissed the guards and began to speak. "We've cleared everything up. This had nothing to do with you. I'm so sorry for what you've been through." "So who was it?" "Someone you would never suspect. Someone who used you." She said it with a righteous fury, her voice laced with anger. That only made me more curious. "Someone I know?" Dr. Reed gave a cold laugh. "More than know them. Your ex-wife, Chloe." I froze, thinking I must have misheard. "Impossible," I blurted out. "Our marriage may have been a disaster, but I knew Chloe's character. She was a patriot, a dedicated officer who always put her country first. She would never do anything to betray her country." Dr. Reed looked surprised. Given my apparent animosity towards Chloe, she had expected me to be furious at the news that she had used me. She hadn't expected me to defend her. "She's already confessed," Dr. Reed said. "She gave a full statement." I didn't understand. "But are there no other possibilities?" "She was with me the entire time. Maybe you should take my statement as well." I didn't understand why Chloe would confess to something she didn't do, but I had to try to give her a fighting chance. "She didn't meet up with you until late afternoon," Dr. Reed explained, "but she left the base in the morning. Your testimony doesn't cover the time frame of the security breach. She had not only taken the fall, but she had also completely exonerated me." I understood then. She had done it to save me, but this was a suicide mission. "Can I see her?" I asked bluntly. I didn't need her to make this kind of sacrifice for me. Dr. Reed didn't say yes or no, only offered a sincere piece of advice. "I wouldn't recommend you see her right now. I have to talk to her." My gaze was stubborn and direct, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. "I'll ask the general. If he approves, you can see her." I nodded my thanks and went back to my quarters to wait. I took a long shower. After days in that cell, I felt filthy. It was almost evening when Dr. Reed came to get me. She told me I could see Chloe. I followed her to another holding cell. Dr. Reed told me to go in alone. She would wait outside. I thanked her and opened the door. When I saw her, I couldn't contain my anger, but seeing how exhausted she looked, I tried to keep my voice gentle. "Why would you confess to something you didn't do?" She gave a bitter smile, but her words were infuriating. "How do you know it's baseless?" "Maybe I really did it." My temper flared. "Chloe, I am in no mood for your games," I said, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know what will happen to you?" "I know." Her voice was quiet, with a hint of resignation that made me sigh. "Then why did you do it?" "Because I couldn't think of any other way. They had you locked up. I couldn't just stand by and let them interrogate you. I would rather it be me." I sighed in frustration. "They weren't going to torture me. This is a formal investigation. They don't beat confessions out of people anymore. You, of all people, should know that. But they wouldn't let me see you. I didn't know what was happening to you. I knew she had done it for me, and I couldn't bring myself to be truly angry with her." I took a deep breath. "So what now? You've taken the blame for all of this. What happens next? Are you going to die for a crime you didn't commit?" This time, she didn't try to deflect. She answered seriously. "No, there are still too many unanswered questions in this case. Nothing will happen to me until they figure it all out. Don't worry about me. Just focus on your work. Don't do anything stupid. Don't get involved. Don't draw any more attention to yourself. I was about to argue, but Dr. Reed opened the door. Ethan, time's up. This is all the time I can give you. I had no choice but to follow her out of the room. After talking to Chloe, I felt even worse. Dr. Reed saw my distress and tried to comfort me. Don't beat yourself up over it. You can never truly know what's in someone's heart. It's not your fault you misjudged her. I just gave a bitter smile and shook my head. I knew Chloe better than that. I wasn't a poor judge of character. I was just frustrated that she would do something so drastic for me. As far as I was concerned, we had been over the moment I decided to leave. But I couldn't explain that to Dr. Reed, and I wasn't about to try. We parted ways at a fork in the path. I went back to my room only to find Scarlett, whom I hadn't seen in a while, waiting at my door. She was holding a food container, looking a little uncertain. I haven't seen you at the mess hall in days, she said. I didn't know what happened, so I've been coming by every day to check on you. I'm glad to finally see you. I was taken aback. Thank you, Scarlett. She shook her head, then asked with concern. So what happened? Where have you been for the past few days? I realized the situation was being kept under wraps, that no one else knew what had happened. I gave a vague excuse. Nothing. I was sent off-site for a few days for some training. Oh, good. I was worried something had happened. My roommate, Colonel Chloe, I haven't seen her in a while either. Her voice trailed off at the end, almost a whisper. Hearing her name from someone else, I just gave a bitter smile and said nothing. We made a little more small talk, and then she left. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, my mind a chaotic mess. I couldn't see a way out of this. If they didn't find the real spy, Chloe would likely be executed. The government has a zero-tolerance policy for espionage. Having her death on my conscience would be a fate worse than death. I couldn't help but wonder if fate had given me a second chance only to make me suffer a crueler end. Since I had been cleared of any wrongdoing, I was quickly reinstated at work. Standing before the research building once again, I instinctively glanced at the guard post. The soldier on duty smiled and nodded at me, but it was a stranger, not Chloe. I took a deep breath, returned the smile, and went inside. The situation had been handled discreetly. No one on my team knew what had happened. They just greeted me warmly and asked where I'd been. What did Dr. Reed tell you? I asked, trying to feel out the situation. She just said you had some personal matters to attend to and took some leave. I went along with her story. I had to take some personal leave, but everything's taken care of now. My colleague didn't press for details, instead launching into a complaint. Thank God you're back. You have no idea. Dr. Reed has been on a warpath, working herself to the bone and driving us all just as hard. We're about to collapse. I offered a few sympathetic words and then steered the conversation back to work. Dr. Reed was a research fanatic. Since my arrival, she had delegated most of the administrative tasks to me so she could focus solely on the experiments. As a result, the junior members of the team were actually closer to me. I never pulled rank with them, so they felt comfortable venting to me. But right now, I was in no mood for it. I was just forcing a smile. My mind was consumed with thoughts of Chloe. I had no idea what was happening to her. Since that one visit, I hadn't been allowed to see her again. A few days later, I heard that Chloe was being transferred to another facility for further investigation. After much hesitation, I went to General Miller and asked for permission to see her off. If this was the last time I would ever see her, I didn't want to live with the regret of not being there. The day they took Chloe to the helicopter, the sky was dark and overcast, the wind whipping up a sandstorm that seemed to swallow the entire base. I saw Chloe, looking much thinner than before, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. But Chloe smiled at me, a gentle, reassuring smile. Don't worry, she said softly. It'll be okay. She said the words, but I could tell she didn't really believe she would be coming back alive. After all, the case was complex. If it were simple, they wouldn't be transferring her. So, after a moment's hesitation, she asked, her voice pleading, Ethan, if I make it back from this, will you forgive me? She knew she was taking advantage of the situation, and she hated herself for it, but she desperately wanted my forgiveness. She couldn't bear the thought of dying while I still hated her. At the last moment, I couldn't stop the tears from welling in my eyes. I never hated you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. After 2 lifetimes, time had smoothed over the sharp edges of the past. I had no hatred left for Chloe. It was all just fate, something to be accepted. Our farewell was cut short when the guards came to take her away. Her last words to me were, "Live a good life." Then she turned and boarded the helicopter. After that, I heard no news of Chloe. I threw myself back into my work, just as before, only now there were 2 research fanatics in the lab instead of 1. Dr. Reed and I seemed to be in an unspoken competition to see who could spend more time in the lab, both of us working nearly around the clock, barely stopping to eat or sleep. I desperately needed the distraction. I couldn't stop because if I did, my mind would be consumed by the thought that Chloe might die because of me, a thought that was driving me to the brink of insanity. I refused to let myself think about it, so I just kept working, forcing my mind to stay occupied. The rest of the team watched us with a mixture of awe and misery, but our relentless pace inspired them, and they threw themselves into the work with renewed vigor. In that supercharged atmosphere, we made surprisingly rapid progress. When our first small-scale test launch was a success, everyone froze in disbelief. Perhaps the success was so sudden, so unexpected, that no one could quite believe it. The lab was silent for a full 30 seconds before someone finally let out a whoop of joy, followed by a wave of cheers and tears of relief. Dr. Reed and I were no exception. We looked at each other, and we both had tears in our eyes. And on the heels of that good news came another surprise. When I got back to my room that evening, I found Chloe standing at my door. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, looking again and again before I could finally accept that it was really her. I found myself running towards her, an involuntary reaction, like a man who has been trapped in darkness for a long time finally seeing the light. The moment I saw her, truly saw her, the weight that had been pressing on my heart for so long finally lifted. A wave of emotion washed over Chloe as she watched me run to her. She offered a reassuring smile. "It's okay. You don't have to worry anymore. Is it over? Did they clear your name? Are you reinstated?" My rapid-fire questions brought a lump to her throat. "Yes," she answered softly. "It's over. They figured everything out." "So who was it?" I didn't know if she knew the details, but I had to ask. Her answer was eerily familiar. "It was someone you would never expect." I froze. The words were so familiar. "Someone I know?" I asked, a sense of dread creeping over me. She didn't draw it out. She just said the name softly. "Scarlett." "What?" I cried out in disbelief, then quickly covered my mouth. When I spoke again, my voice was much quieter. How could it be her? She didn't have access to any of the classified material. I was so shocked the questions just tumbled out. Chloe's quiet reply made everything click into place. But what no one considered was that it was a supply run day. On a supply run day, Scarlett could leave the base without filing a special request. It was part of her regular duties, so no one would have suspected a thing. I learned from Chloe that Scarlett hadn't betrayed her country, because this was her country. She was a foreign national, a sleeper agent who had been cultivated for this mission since childhood. The background checks for the research staff were too thorough, so she had infiltrated the base as a low-level enlisted soldier. From there, she had used her natural charm and social skills to build relationships with everyone on the base. She was personable, she knew the base inside and out, and her presence anywhere would never raise suspicion. She was known for being friendly with everyone, so no one would question her talking to anyone. With her high emotional intelligence, she could get anyone to open up to her, to vent their frustrations, making it easy for her to casually gather bits and pieces of information. She had finally gathered enough intelligence and had planned to pass it on that day, but the transmission was intercepted. So she and her contact in the town had conspired to frame me. I couldn't quite process what I was feeling. I just stood there, stunned, for a long time. Scarlett was the first person I had met here. She was so graceful, so kind and considerate, someone who instantly put you at ease. And to think it had all been an act, a carefully crafted persona designed to extract national secrets. I pictured her face, smiling as she told me what a great place this was, telling me to let her know if I needed anything, standing at my door with a container of food, saying, "I was worried you hadn't eaten." The memories flashed through my mind, and I couldn't deny that I had been touched by her apparent kindness. It seemed my trust had been betrayed once again. I let out a helpless laugh, but it was laced with a deep bitterness. Chloe didn't know what to say to comfort me. She just watched me with a worried expression. "So what will happen to her?" I murmured, half to myself, half to her. But Chloe still answered, "You know what will happen." Yes, I knew. There was no need to ask. Espionage was an unforgivable crime. I felt no sympathy for her, no pity. It was just a shame. Such a seemingly good person, and all along she had been working to harm our country. A few days later, the news about Scarlett spread through the base, and everyone was stunned. The members of my team came to me in disbelief, and I confirmed the story for them. Their shock quickly turned to anger, anger that she was a spy, and anger at her betrayal. Everyone on the base had known her to some extent, and my team had been particularly close to her, as we were her primary targets. The whole affair eventually blew over. I didn't go to see Scarlett being taken away, but a colleague told me that she had insisted on taking one thing with her, a pair of handmade gloves. I felt a slight tremor in my hand when I heard that. After that incident, the base conducted a new round of security checks on all personnel. A number of people were reassigned, and Chloe was one of them. When she came to say her final goodbye, we were both surprisingly calm. Chloe sighed. "Ethan, I'm leaving. Where are you going?" "I've been reassigned to my old post. Command feels I'm no longer a good fit for this facility. They're sending me back to Colorado." "That's good. Go back. Go back and be the great colonel you are." It was the answer she had expected. She gave a bitter smile and asked, trying to sound casual, "When do you think you'll be back?" I sighed. "I don't know. I might never go back." The conversation ended there. After a long silence, I heard her say a quiet, "Okay." Then, cautiously, she asked, "Can I ask for one last thing?" I raised an eyebrow. "What is it? Will you come watch the stars with me, one last time?" she asked hesitantly, but my answer was quick and simple. "Okay." We climbed to the top of a nearby mesa, where the sky was filled with a brilliant canopy of stars. In the quiet of the desert night, the sound of the crickets was loud, and the fireflies blinking in the distance seemed to be putting on a show just for us. It was a beautiful, romantic scene, but it was also our final goodbye. I hadn't felt so relaxed in a long time. The desert breeze carried the sweet scent of sage and wildflowers. I lay back on the ground and stared up at the sky. Neither of us spoke. Suddenly, a shooting star streaked across the sky, and Chloe closed her eyes to make a wish. I found it strange. She was the least superstitious person I knew, yet here she was making a wish on a star. "Chloe, what did you wish for?" "For the person I love to have a long, happy, and peaceful life." My breath caught for a second, but she didn't seem to want to make me uncomfortable. She quickly changed the subject. "Don't you have a wish? You used to be the one who always made a wish on shooting stars. Like you said, that was in the past. I'm not that person anymore." After 2 lifetimes, I had learned that wishing was a useless exercise. In my last life, I had wished for Chloe to love me, a wish that went unanswered even at my death. In this life, I had wished never to see her again, to be free of our entanglement. But not only had I seen her, she had nearly died for me, a debt that would haunt me forever. So what was the point of wishing? Everything just turned out the opposite of what I wanted. We talked for a long time about everything and nothing, until it was so late we had to head back. It was then that Chloe finally asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Ethan, can we still be friends?" I looked at her and said calmly, "If you want to be, I have no objection, but I don't think it will make much of a difference. I'll probably be stuck here for the rest of my life." Hearing that, she blurted out, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" I didn't understand what she meant. She clarified, "Coming here. No, I don't regret it. I'm doing what I love, working for something I believe in. How could I regret that?" Chloe was quiet for a moment, then she smiled. "Good. I hope you succeed, for our country, and for yourself." "I will." And so, under a sky full of stars, we said our goodbyes. After that night, Chloe returned to Fort Carson, and she never heard from me again. She knew where I was, but she couldn't see me. She couldn't get on the base, and she couldn't try again. Years later, the news of our project's success was announced to the world. My name and photograph were on the front page of every newspaper on every news channel. Chloe watched the confident, successful man on the screen, and it was like seeing him for the very first time. He had finally become the man he was always meant to be, shattering the life he once had and rising from the ashes, reborn.